Joining fields, taking over. No one can deny we're queens in our own rights. Right or flee, we're ruling the game. Turning heads, yeah, we're making our own name. Living free, we're breaking the mold. Unapologetic, we're standing bold. Every picture we post, it's a story untold. We're inspiring souls, watch us unfold. Watch us unfold.
Welcome back to Rooted in Your Confidence, the podcast where we have real empowering conversations with women who are owning their space in male-dominated industries. I am your host, Samantha Kay, and today's guest is someone whose story reflects what exactly this show is all about, being in environments that demand your silence and still finding the strength to speak up, step out, and build something on your own terms. Sweta Vikram started in corporate America. She worked in nonprofit startups and spaces where performances were valued over well-being, and burnout was seen as just part of the job. But she didn't end there. She walked away from that, what was expected, and chose the path that centered her health, her truth, and her voice. She is now an Ayurvedic doctor, international speaker, and wellness entrepreneur, helping ambitious women reclaim their vitality and empower themselves inside and out. This conversation is just about to shift from survival to self-trust. Let's talk about it. Welcome, Sudha. Tell me more about you. You can tell your story better than I can, so tell the audience more. I gave them a little bit, but I chopped through some of it.
Thank you for having me on your show, Samantha. This is lovely. What a beautiful way to start a Sunday. And thank you to everyone who was tuned in. So my name is Sweta Vikram. I am an Ayurvedic doctor, a grief coach, a trauma-informed yoga teacher, author of 14 books, wellness speaker, communications professional, and an adjunct professor. And, in my wellness space, I help people lower their anxiety and their stress and resolve gut issues using holistic wellness tips, because I've been there where, if I could have prevented my burnout, not ended up in the ER if I knew all of these things existed. And even in the communication world, I bring in wellness. And what I mean by that, Samantha, is how can we pause? So we work from a place of calm and not react. We respond. And I think the world is so reactive right now. So I try to bring in wellness in the work that I do. But even in the world of communication, we need wellness so that there is kindness at the root of everything that's going on.
Absolutely. I love what you do. I love what you stand for. And it's just amazing because, like you said, especially as women, because I speak to women, so we always involved in something. We are always showing up for others, giving our best, doing too much. So it affects our body. So what you do is amazing. It teaches women how to calm down, how to slow down, and be there for themselves. So I absolutely love what you do. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
around women, there's so much guilt associated with rest.
Yes.
You feel, and I've been there, and there are bad days where I still struggle with it. Is it okay? Like it almost feels like, do I have the permission?
Yes, I know. That's what happens. We feel we need permission to be who we are, show up as ourselves, because that's what the world has taught us as women. We have to show up to be there for everyone else, to do everything perfectly in order to be loved and accepted. We've been taught this from childhood. So this has been passed down, depending even on your culture, depending on your household. So we just automatically fall into that. And it's funny. I was having a conversation. I went to a music festival yesterday, and I was talking to some friends, and we were talking about inherently that's all we know. And it seems like forever ago where we as women did not have to do this, but it hasn't. Not until the 70s were we even allowed to have anything where we had our own voices or knew that we could speak up, because women were taught, this is how it all started, to be honest. A piece of man is better than no man at all. And someone said, oh, that's so crazy. But it's not crazy, because you think about it. Women weren't allowed to have houses, bank accounts, or anything until the early 70s. And that, for me, I'm 54. I was just 2 years old when women were really allowed to have anything for themselves. So it hasn't been that long.
It hasn't. And so much is happening so fast that while we are progressing in many ways, in a lot of ways, even if you're not regressing, things haven't changed. Like this guilt, this pressure, this baggage, this stories of the world that women carry, and no matter where they are. I spoke at an event last week, which was nonprofit leaders, women leaders in NYC, and their struggles versus when I speak to, you know, girls in a college. Different degree of struggles, but the conditioning to a large extent. Your conditioning might differ from my conditioning, but we still have been conditioned to not prioritize ourselves because we've been made to think that self-care is selfish, even though it's sacred. Like, how can we pour from an empty cup? It's something as simple as that. But there's just, and even the conversations, Samantha, around self-care is like, oh, a spa day or go out to dinner with your girlfriend. Say, that's not sustainable.
But I think it all starts with being able to care for yourself and starting to love yourself. But we as women were not taught to love ourselves. We were not taught to show up for us. We were taught just to be who the world needs and to take care of and to show up. If not, you're not a good woman or you're not a good mother or a wife. So we were always defined by someone else's need for us.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I was writing an article about this last week about why women, there are a lot of conversations on why don't women take better care of themselves. We've just never been taught because we've been told, depending on the stage of life, this is how you should be.
Yes.
It might be changing today. Like, I remember talking to my mom's friends and they were like, oh, I'm married, I've had kids, like, I don't need to take care. That concept exists around cultures because the female body was supposed to look attractive. So a man for the male gaze and then to bear children, and the job was done. And so many of them, for instance, developed like joint pain or arthritis or osteoporosis, millions of other health issues. It's because they never thought they deserved the care. And I think that's where the conversation goes back to, where women think or have been told it's a privilege to think of you and it's a selfish thing to think about you, which really breaks my heart.
It does. And it burns me inside because, like you, when my mother was alive, she just felt running for her family was her purpose, her cause. Even though she worked every day, was on different boards, volunteered, went to church, did all the things, but that still wasn't enough. And just the thought of her at the time, not until she was older and my father had passed, so she had more time for her. She didn't know what to do with herself for a long time. She did not. And she had attached herself to me until she just started getting out, being with people and starting to learn how to love on herself. She started doing yoga. She started doing all the things to relax herself and allow herself just to be. So it's a learned behavior that is practiced until we unlearn it. And it starts with us, and especially what you and I do for women.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, and we need to have more conversations where this becomes the new normal. Women taking care of themselves on a daily basis in the smallest of ways versus waiting for the end of the month to get a massage.
Exactly. It should be every single day. We do something to care for ourselves and to pour love into ourselves so that we know that we are inherently worthy of it. Because that's what I don't think that they understand. We as women don't understand that we are worthy of it from the day that we are born, not when someone tells us it is okay.
And not when someone gives us this external validation. That's the other thing. Like, you're someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's sister, someone's mom, a million other relationship, right? Like, who are you? And that's one of the reasons I love solo trips. I love traveling with my husband, but I like to travel alone because in that quiet moment, I realize, who am I? What do I like? Without others telling me who I am.
Yes, that in itself is a win. When you can just be and be good with you. When you can just show up for you. Yes. Oh my goodness. Look, I have totally went off topic too.
But then wellness is such a big part of how we show up at our work, and especially emotional well-being.
Yes. And I don't think that since we don't know how to do it in our personal lives, we don't know how to do it on jobs, especially when they are male dominated. We fall back into the norms. We really do.
And it's kind of almost expected.
It is, because even though we do the work on ourselves, a lot of men have not. So why do we think that environment is supposed to change when we're the only ones having done work on ourselves?
Right.
You know? And it's not an excuse. By no means. I'm giving no excuses for them, but I'm just bringing reality to it. Like everyone, oh, what can we do to educate the men? What can we do to do this for them? They have to want it. They have to seek it, just like we do. We can't just, someone can't just put it on our laps and we expect like they're going to do it. They have to want it. They have to be able to see it for themselves.
I agree. And I think that's where, it goes back to what we started talking about, like that kindness
Yeah.
and that communication is so necessary because numbers will tell you more women have autoimmune diseases than men. It's coming from being repressed emotionally, right? So what happens is nothing quite starts, and then it's almost like an emotional explosion.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, don't overreact, don't be so dramatic. But no one has ever held space
That is so
for a
true.
woman to, right, to even say what's on their mind. So I think both men and women women need to start owning, like, this is who we are. If you think I'm dramatic, I also am way more caring than, and by I mean women as such, are way more caring maybe in softer, gentler ways than compared to men. So you can't eat the cake and have it too. Like, you can't expect me to navigate the world being stoic and then be affectionate.
Yes, but that's their expectations. That's what they were taught. And I believe that only we, as when we start caring and loving for ourselves, when we start showing up for ourselves, do we
Yes.
understand that we teach a people how to treat us, that we show up differently. We take that, what they label us, because I've been labeled many a day working in environments where I was the only woman. Listen, I'm bossy, I'm animated, I'm too much, I'm over the top, I'm too loud. Same loud that they are, same octave. But it's a problem when I do it. But I've now realized that's my superpower. Those are the things. I'm their kryptonite. I'm their kryptonite because those things that they label me as are the things that scare them about me. And I'm not responsible for who or how they feel. They are responsible for their thoughts that they're having about me that make them feel a certain way and have them being very uncomfortable where they lash out and say things. That's one thing that I've noticed about myself as I've done the work and have grown.
Right.
Yes.
I really appreciate you sharing that, but also I've realized, like, a friend of mine who's a therapist and works with kids in high school, and I was talking to her about, like, as teenagers, how are young boys and girls showing up because they become adults, they go into the corporate world, and they're bringing in those attitudes. And she said something very interesting. She said the conversations at home have to change.
Yes. Exactly.
Both, if it's a single parent home, but if it's both the parents are there, they both have to show, not tell. Like, another friend of mine, she's like, I want to go for a run so that my kids know this is a healthy lifestyle. Mom's job is not just to cook and feed. Yes, I do that. But I also go to work. I also have a life. I also work out. So these stories have to start changing in homes when kids are being born, they're growing up. You can't tell a woman, don't do this as a mom when you're living through that truth. You can't tell a boy, respect a woman when the boy has never seen a woman being respected.
Oh, exactly.
And to your point, not many of them will take that initiative because it works for them. So if we want the world to change, our homes, the stories we tell at home have to change. How we treat our children have to change. How we approach gender has to change.
Of course, those are so important because we have defined it and we have separated us so many instead of allowing everyone to be a human being. Yes, it's male and female, but we are all human beings and we all have feelings and emotions that we tap into that have been and we have been embodied with from childhood and growing into that and going into these settings where we're working with other humans. And when you look at society as a whole, when you go into these work environments because women were not working, some of them still don't, it's still highly populated by men. And when you go in there, they become uncomfortable because it was never had the conversations in their own personal homes about women in workforces. And they come in with their own biases, especially if they had mothers that stayed at home or grandmothers that stayed at home and cared for them. So they automatically assume when they see a woman at a job, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be their therapist. We're supposed to be the person that they lean on. We're supposed to help them with the tedious tasks that they do not want to do. So, of course, until we shift the whole environment, that's why it's so important for us as women in these jobs to let them know what we need to survive, what we need to thrive, and what we need to help elevate their companies. We can't just do it. So many people say, oh, get your own table. That sounds good. But how are you going to get your own table if you're not working and supporting and pushing yourself and motivating yourself? I think that it's a bigger picture to this.
I couldn't agree more. And I love how you said that. It's your approach is bringing people together,
Yes.
us rising together, us educating. And I love how you share that because I'm a big believer in that. And also the whole thing that we're talking about, like these conversations can't be just board meeting then. No, it has to be on a daily basis. It has to be shown in action on a daily basis.
That's right. Because if we don't talk about it, that everything just stays the same. It's like oppression. If you allow your oppressor to oppress you and you never say anything, they continue to oppress you.
Yeah. I remember in one of the jobs where I was at many, many moons ago, I was much younger. I lacked the tact, so to speak, or the experience to handle this situation. I remember walking up to my manager, who was male, and asked for a raise. I'd worked there for, I can't remember how long. And, I thought I deserved a raise. At the most, I thought he would say no. But, at least I would have done my bit. When you're that young, you think no is fine. It's not like, no, I deserve a raise. This is what I've done. So anyways, I show up and he says to me, your husband has a good job. Like, why do you need a raise? And I remember dissolving into tears, because that was my response, the reaction. And this is where wellness comes in for me. No, take a deep breath. You have a response. I had a response after I went back home on the weekend. I was so angry. I was venting about it to my husband. I was talking about it to my friends. And I was so mad at myself, Samantha, that I didn't say anything. But I just burst into tears because I grew up with a feminist father. So for me, as one of my first few jobs as a young woman, I didn't think a man would treat me like that. And that's when it was like debunking the myths of being in a male-dominated profession where it's like, no, that happens. Just because you didn't see that growing up doesn't mean... And see, my thing was an extreme. Growing up in an Indian family, patriarchy was big in the culture. I didn't see that much in my immediate family.
See,
So I was raised to believe I could do anything.
that is
Right, so I went out in the world and I asked for a raise where women didn't. But then I became a little girl when someone actually berated me. It's insulting someone when saying your husband makes that money, why do you need? And then I was like, I went to grad school. Like, I still imagine all these years later, I still remember sobbing and feeling so small in that room that I had to justify why I deserved a raise as opposed to not ever having to do that. As a manager, you know the work that I did, and that person knew exactly where to hit so I would feel small and invisible and really pitiable.
Oh, that in itself, I haven't experienced that, thank goodness, because I've worked in environments where I'm a union worker. So being a union worker, I'm going to get a raise. But what they will not do is put me on jobs that accumulate more money, which is overtime and things like that. I have enough. What do you need so much for? And I'm not married. I'm divorced and I'm single. So for them to assume that I don't need as much as any other human being, I think that is so selfish and unfair and so chauvinistic and sexist. But it's to the point where I don't mind saying it. I remember being afraid to speak up, being angry, walking away, talking about it with everybody else. But in the place that it happens is the place that I speak up now. I'm no longer allowing anyone to do and treat me anyway. It might not change it, but it does bring awareness. That's the difference.
Yes. And thank you for being your own advocate. But I think also when we speak up, it's good for a mental and emotional well-being. For me, everything goes back to that. Like the example that you shared of, you are your own advocate. Even if it doesn't change things, you speak up. Instead of talking about it 2 days later to co-workers and friends, what I did, I was inexperienced, really young at that time. When you are sobbing, you're in a puddle, and then you are angry, that just tells you the emotional well-being has been hit, right?
That's right. It makes the...
All of it. Yeah.
It does. It takes all the fight out of you. It really exhausts you. As a woman, especially if you're one of few women and then you see no one else like you in this, because representation is everything. And when we don't have it, we feel so alone. We feel lost. We already don't feel like we should be there because they tell us that, even though we know we're overqualified. We retract. We then sit back. We don't show up as much. So for us to find our voices, for even those tears that you shed, it taught you something. You learned something. You grew from that. That's how I have to look at things now, because I looked at it as woe before, but now those tears were strength because you were able to process it, get it out, and you no longer allow people to show up and treat you that way. Those are wins.
Absolutely. I love how you phrase that, but it goes back to the point that you made a little while ago. It starts with self-love and self-worth.
Yes.
Self-worth will come in when you truly love yourself, not aspects of you, all of you.
That's right.
People don't get to choose parts of any of us, including our own selves, right? So when you know what you're worthy of, and that takes work, that takes silence, that takes doing the work, that takes, whether it's coaching or meditation or pauses, whatever be it, it takes work to come to this realization. And I think that's such a reminder for women everywhere. Do the work.
Oh, yeah.
Make that investment in what you need to do, because nobody can do it alone. You know, as an Ayurvedic doctor, I'll have people who are Google doctors, right? Or WhatsApp. And I call this, being sarcastic, but I find it really funny, WhatsApp university graduates, because someone circulates something on WhatsApp and now they're hurting themselves. They're like, do you think it's right? And finally I have to say, if I sat down and answered every WhatsApp message, I wouldn't have a career.
That's right.
You know what? Make an appointment. Spend that money. You spending that money on your shopping, on your vacation, good for you. Invest that in your health. Why do you want free information that could hurt you?
That's right.
Or hit a friend or a family member just because they are an Ayurvedic doctor or an acupuncturist or a homeopathy doctor, whatever have you, right? You need help, schedule an appointment, and we take it from there. So women, I think, are so also, and this is something that I'm realizing, the difference between my male and female clients. When my male clients, when they sign up, they do the work. For women, very often, it's not that they don't do the work. It's also the many layers of responsibilities that they have. And also the guilt of, should I make this investment in myself? If men want to work with a coach, they'll say, I'm worthy of, I need to do this to get to the next level. Women are like, oh, I might be able to buy a toy for my child in that money. Or maybe we could pay for one night of an Airbnb somewhere. I don't know what the thinking is. But my point being, even in investing and getting to the next level, very often women hold themselves back. I'm guilty of it on many days.
No.
I'm always thinking about others but myself.
And I absolutely agree with you. And that's why I push. I think when we can get to the core of it and women can understand self-love first before self-care,
Yes.
that is when they decide that that pair of shoes is not going to be enough. That spa day that is not going to be enough. They need to pour something else. Because in order to love yourself, you have to understand you. You have to get to the core of you. That inside, where you realize where these thoughts are coming from, where you learned the behaviors of not showing up for you and giving you to everyone else. But we have not been like we talked about earlier, we have not been taught this. And to reshape and rethink all that we have been instilled in us over time, it really can hurt. Because now you're learning who you are as a new human. And that in itself is scary for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And, I was talking to a friend about this. It's when people stop drinking, they are not judging others who drink. But the people who drink think they're being judged. So it's like, oh, you're no fun any longer. Why would you stop drinking? What happened? And this is a small example. That's also true when you start working on yourselves.
That's right.
Like I remember I started doing yoga, growing up in an Indian home, I've seen people do their asanas, do their poses, do all of that stuff, right? But my journey started maybe 20 years ago because I was in grad school and I realized running a marketing department of a company as a young woman and going to school and writing, it was just a lot and my workouts were not enough. And that's how I ended up in a yoga studio. And I found that whole thing changed me, for who I was, how I was showing up. But it was such a struggle. That permission of, can I do this? Should I be doing this? No one was stopping me. But very often women also don't give ourselves permission because we think someone else is stopping us, right? That was my show. But then there were other people. They were like, oh, so are you going to be that person who just head down, feet up. That's not what yoga is about. Yesterday was the International Day of Yoga. Yoga is quietening of thoughts. It's stilling of mind, and being more compassionate, being more curious. But the stereotype became like, oh, that's who I was going to become. Oh, so are you going to quit this? Are you going to quit that? I don't know. I just started. I'm exploring this journey. So people have made up their minds because it makes them feel secure. And I think that's the armor we need to not break is a strong word, but even like dissolve or diffuse a little bit of light into that armor. That, change is not a bad thing. These conversations of the spaces where women belong, it is not a bad thing. It's a big pie. There's a slice for everyone. Can we not show up with scarcity mindset?
Ooh, I love that. It's a slice for everyone. It is. It really is.
When you think of Thanksgiving, no matter whether it's one person or 40 people dinner, everyone gets a slice of that pumpkin pie. There's not one person and there's still some leftovers.
That's right.
So if we approach, like, you don't have to take such a big slice, a teeny tiny sliver, that's enough. Everybody gets something versus the first person gets, you might not always be the first person to approach that opportunity or the Thanksgiving table.
That is true. I think, and what I've learned over time is that what you're supposed to have in your life is going to come to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, what someone else gets is theirs. I have no control over that. I can't assume that if I had what they had, I was going to do what they did with it. So allowing people to get their slice, allowing them to use it for their purpose is their business. And that's what happens. A lot of times we get so caught up thinking about what the next person has. Or even, I'm going to tell you, I have no people, they don't even want to share their platforms because God forbid someone else says something more profound. But what's for you is for you. What's for me is for me. And that's how we grow in this world, when we all realize that.
I love that, Samantha. No wonder we're having this conversation today.
Yeah.
And that's my approach as well. What's mine will always be mine. And what's not, whatever I do, it will never be mine. So have some faith in whoever you believe in, whether it's God, universe, nothing, but have some faith
Right.
in your abilities. It's, and I think that's what creates that abundance mindset. And it goes back to that emotional well-being and mental well-being, when if I'm like, I won't get it, see, this is increasing my anxiety, versus saying, what's mine will be mine. It just calms your nervous system. We live in a world where people's nervous system is so dysregulated, we are forever reacting.
That's right. That's right.
Chaos in this world. All the decision makers, I think they all have dysregulated nervous systems. Be it in offices, be in any office that we talk about, the big decision makers, I think the nervous system is not as healthy and optimal as it needs to be. So we are like constantly in that survival mode versus it's going to work out.
Yes. And when we know, that's where the thriving happens. That's when we get to show up. That's when we get to make a difference. When we stop just pushing through and fighting for every nook and cranny. But again, we've been taught this. This is what has been passed down inherently, especially if you're a minority, especially if you're a person of color. You've only been given this much and told what to do with it. And we've done it. And we've surpassed what they thought. So now we still think that we have to be in that struggle mode. We still think that we have to be in survival mode instead of thriving mode, where we just show up and show out and show the world what we're made of. And not even just the world, but show ourselves, show our families, show our children, show everyone that's right there with us.
100%. And I think that I was also thinking about when you talked about burnout, right?
Yes.
It's the burnout amongst women when you think about it. It's not necessarily that people seek validation. I don't think that's true for everyone. It just doesn't stop. Like you come done from work, you're still checking your emails. You're done with the emails, you're cooking for someone. You're done with cooking, you're reading a book to somebody. Or you might have elder care responsibilities. You might have a pet. You might have a partner. And as a culture, we need to just say it's okay to do nothing.
That
Nothingness is so restorative. Like rest has to be radical, because good work, well-rested women, we change the world.
Exactly. I think it's funny. I have so many conversations, me working in the environment that I work in. I was talking to some very good friends of mine. Let me tell you, I think that they support me 110% in everything that I do. And of course, I work in a male-dominated industry, so you know they're men. And one of them was talking about his expectations of his sister in regard to when his mother was alive. He expected her to take care of her. He expected her to do these things. He expected her to show up, to give up. But he was still living his life with his family. And I could not get him to understand that she had a choice in this. And that's what we as women adopt, these thoughts that other people have for us. Like, we should do this as women. We should give up that. We should sacrifice. And anything outside of that, we're doing something wrong. And I think it takes a confident, courageous woman to be able to stand in her truth and say, no, I'm not going to be able to do it. And it's something that is learned and taught, because it isn't automatic. Some people it is, but it's very rare that you meet a woman that's able to do that without having done the work on herself and not feel that she's being selfish like the world wants her to believe.
That's so true. And I think I'll also say, add to what you just said, which was so profound, is sometimes that transformation, that transition, right, of getting to that place of standing in your own voice doesn't mean it'll always be smooth. You might still have doubts, but courage is you still go through with it.
That's right.
I'm going to speak for myself. It might, if you're an empath, if you're a sensitive person, you might not be okay saying the no. But if you do it, it's still a win.
That's right.
So it's also learning to accept all parts of you. Like, you don't have to become dry and dead to speak for yourself, to be an advocate. You could still be squirmish, and that's okay. But realizing the end result is more important than that whole journey of how would this feel. And eventually there comes, like you said, you do the work. It's a practice. It becomes a muscle memory. It's like yoga, you know. First day you touch your knees. By the end of the month, you might be touching your toes.
Yeah.
And that becomes, it's muscle memory. So we have to create these habits through practice, and also surrounding ourselves with other people who support us. And I'm not saying, again, being dependent on them, but it's, you know, I think Jim Rohn said this, we are the sum total of the 5 people we talk most to.
That's right.
If the 5 people around you speak the way you speak, you realize you're not the minority. It's not like your voice is like, oh, I'm picking up a fight. No, it's like, no, that's how people should be. That's how women should be.
That's right.
Right? Versus if everyone around you is like, no, that's okay. I want to keep the peace. Then you feel like the thing that people say, are you being too loud? You being too dominating? You being X, Y, Z, 50 million adjectives. So I think for women, I couldn't emphasize this enough. Surround yourself with people who amplify your voice and choice. It's very, very important. And they don't need to always necessarily get it, but they shouldn't be pulling the rug from underneath your feet either.
Oh, yes. You have to surround yourself. And I think life is so much sweeter when we do surround ourselves with our people. When I say our people, I mean people that are on the journey that you're on. That's life journey that you're growing, you're elevating, you're motivating, you're pushing forward. In spite of those doubts that we have, we use those thoughts. For me, I use those thoughts that other people have that they feel as negatives about me as my superpowers. I use that. And me just changing the way that those words hit me changed how I showed up, and learning how to do that, you know, and having these powerful conversations with other women that are doing good things, that are making the world turn in a different direction than the way some people want it, that know that we have the right to show up and have a voice in this world is so important. I believe that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just couldn't agree. Man, it's scary. You know, when you're the outlier, so to speak, or you're the person who people know, oh, she will. And I think there comes a point where you will, a lot of people in your circle, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, will drop dead because they can't handle your power. And that's okay. Learning to accept, to not have expectations. When you change, people don't owe you anything.
That's right.
You owe it to yourself to live your best life. And that best life, whatever that means to you on a given day, right? If it's not hurting someone else, if it's empowering you, that's your best life. I think that's where sometimes we struggle as women, because we do so much. We have these expectations. Oh, so-and-so will support me. People don't like to rock the boat.
Mm-hmm.
So find your community that gets you. And it's okay. Things don't necessarily always end. They transform. Relationships transform. Stop expecting, stop attaching yourselves to them.
That's right. Because you know what? I love that you said we transform. We get to transform. We've been taught to transform as women into who we were thought other people needed, but now we get to transform into who we want to be. That is the win. That is the knowing. That is the joy that comes when you transform into the human that you wanted to be and not who everyone else around you said to be. And I just think that's a win for each and every woman out here when we recognize that. And we're no longer, then I know the word burnout, I don't like that word, just to let you know. But I don't like it. You want me to tell you why?
Yeah, I do want to know why.
I don't like burnout because to burn out means that you're done. You're over. But is it burnout or is it us as women learning our maximum, learning our minimum, learning that medium that we are at? You know, learning where they say that cup we give from our overflow. That's why I say, is it really burnout? Are we all burnt out where we're, you know, to think of something burning, it means that it is totally done. It's ashes. And are we ashes? I know from the ashes of the bills of Phoenix and all the beautiful things and metaphors. But at the end of the day, are we really, or are we not managing our time? Are we not managing our minds? Are we not managing our bodies? Are we not getting into a good yoga practice where we can then allow ourselves to really get focused on our inner selves so it can be projected on the outside? So that's what I think a lot of women, I think the words that we use make us feel a certain way. So I think we get to change. If we change the way we're speaking and the way we're showing up, then we get to feel different in a certain way while doing the work. It reshapes the way we're thinking about it. Like, I'm burnt out. I can't do anything. I can't. Yes, you're tired. Let's figure out why we're naming it burnout. Because you're not managing your time. Because you're not showing up for you. Because you're not giving you. Because you're not doing this. So we start taking that burnout and naming exactly what it is that has us feeling like it's no more of us. Then we get to change the world.
I love that. I never thought of it that way. Now when you say it, like burn, like you said, it almost sounds very final.
Yes.
Because when something turns to ashes, it's done.
It's-
There are no second chances, but that's not the point. It's depletion.
Yes.
You get to resuscitate yourself.
Exactly. And I think that is so important. That's why certain things I just like, because of the way our brains think, because we automatically think it's over, it's done, it's no more. And it's so much more. We just have to learn how to pivot. We just have to learn how to redirect in order to grow.
And we have to learn to be okay with everyone not liking us.
That in itself, because we think everybody's supposed to like us and love us. Mm-mm.
And they don't. If someone said, can you bake 5 pies? You baked 6. They still won't like you because they'll find, oh, the rhubarb pie is missing. Like, I'm just saying, like, there is, no matter what you do, you cannot please everyone. But then again, I remember, Samantha, I used to have this, there was a running joke between me and my dad when he was alive. I was like, brownies and samosas and pizza. They're 3 things we're supposed to make people happy. That's it. We are not supposed to make each other happy. We're supposed to be kind.
There you go.
My happiness shouldn't depend on external factors.
That's right.
It does. We feel grateful for it. But to always be rooted and anchored, stop waiting for that external validation. Because it's so transient. Depending on how the person wakes up, where they are in life, today you could have made like a nice sandwich for them and they could love it. You make it the same thing next day. Is this how you make a sandwich?
Yeah. You're missing something. Yesterday.
Something with less mayo. And then you think, oh, I'm just not good enough. So when you stand in your power, you stand in your story, have your good people as anchors, but then not. And this is yoga. To me, this is wellness, right? People think yoga is all about being bendy and posting pictures. And it's Instagram. No. This is a 5,000, like thousands of years old science, which tells you, and it's very empowering, that yoga is the stilling of thoughts. Being mentally flexible is yoga. You don't just have to be physically flexible. So, standing in your own truth, taking care of yourself, all of that is yoga.
That's right.
Right? That's wellness. So being anchored in who you are is that light. So you're not waiting for someone else to come light up the lamp within. No, you have the power. Why are you giving it? And I think very often as women, we've been conditioned. You take the torch, you pass it to the next person. No, you take the torch. Tell the other person, I will help you, but learn to find your light. And be okay with the transformation. And we want to change, but we want everyone to applaud us and tell us, see, look at the good work you've done. No one has the interest. When you change, it scares people.
That's right. It does. It does. And it's okay. And it's okay for them to feel what they feel. And I applaud them in allowing themselves to feel that, but I don't have to attach myself to it.
Absolutely. And that's yoga, detachment.
Yes.
And the other profound thing is do the work, don't be attached to the outcome.
Ooh.
So because you're doing the work doesn't mean overnight changes will happen. No. I'm sure you've seen that too. I know I've seen that. I am still friends with some of the people I grew up with, but with many of them, it's not like anything was dramatic and things ended. No, we just picked different paths, or different paths picked us.
That's right. And I believe that. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I wasn't years ago. I was like, oh, something, and it must be something great that should have happened to pull us in different directions. But this was just part of the plan, and it's okay. You know?
Exactly. And because as women, again, we've been told to be members of the Forever Club.
We have.
Forever friends, forever everything, forever this. But, life has other plans. And the one thing I will say is it is a gift to be able to work on yourself, to change, to evolve, to see how you might have reacted to do a situation 5 years ago versus today is like, I'm going to sleep over it and then respond. And I feel sorry for people, and it's their choice. There's no judgment. I feel sorry for people who don't get to experience that. To be the same person you were 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 20 years ago, change is scary, but it's also, it's like riding the wave of the season, of the circadian rhythm of Mother Nature, like to be a bud and to blossom and then to perish. And then you rise from that again, versus to be a perennial where nothing goes wrong ever. It's always the same. It's not as joyous. It's not as transformative, and it doesn't bring your path and my path wouldn't have crossed if we weren't on our journeys. If you were the same person you were X number of years ago, if I was the same person X number of years ago, even within my yoga practice, Samantha, there was a point all I thought was yoga had to be a cardio thing, and I had to be this blendy and be able to do those poses. Oh my God. For you in your work, there is so much more to when you started, right?
It
For all
is.
in our paths.
I just think about it. I remember being a woman and being in these jobs and just being in this world. I told myself the same things my mother had said. Oh, I like being in the background. I like not being in the front. I help others. That wasn't my truth. And that wasn't where I like being. I like being out in the front. I like talking. I like the world to know that I have a voice and I get to be seen and heard. And that's why I do the work that I do, because I know that there's so many women that's been taught and it's been passed down inherently that you just attach yourself to what you've seen and what you heard, and you get to do this work and you get to shift that thought process and you get to become who you want to be. And that means learning how to define you as a human being. And that's when the win happens for you in your life. And as scary as it may be, those steps that you take is your courage. That's courage, taking the necessary steps to get to that place. Be it confident, be it coach, be it firefighter, whomever and however you choose to charge forward. That's what it is. That's what the courage is. Yeah.
I love that. In my case, I've always been an extrovert. Been a very extroverted, much like my dad, like people, all of that. I love all of that. And so everyone is like, oh, Sweta is the Energizer Bunny.
See?
If someone is going through a bad thing, oh, you be there, you light up the room. And then you carry that baggage, that responsibility with you. And then I realized I am back, but I also need a lot of quiet. I need growth happens in stillness. Growth doesn't happen otherwise. Growth happens in pauses. So I need that balance. And in finding that balance, I was like, for a lot of people, the quiet me didn't work. They always wanted that extroverted me that was making them feel comfortable. So, you didn't want to displease people, but that win happened when I was like, I am both. And I need to not label myself. Today, I might feel extroverted, and that's great, but I'd also like to retreat to my cocoon. That's where I find the energy. Home, having family, being able to cook, just going for a walk with people, without people, doesn't matter. So it's also being open to that evolution within self is such a win that just because you liked a thing 5 years ago doesn't mean you have to like it today. That's what is called transformation.
I love this. I love this conversation, Sweta. But we're almost at time, so you're gonna have to come back, and we're gonna have to have more conversations. But before we go, I need you to. I ask all my guests this one question. Tell me what it means to you to be rooted in your confidence.
That's such a beautiful question. How many hours do we have? I think being humble, being curious, being open to what others have to say, while knowing what this truth means to me. You know, when I was younger, my rooted in confidence was, I was like, there was only one truth, the truth that I was seeing. And to me, that was the opposite of confidence. That's ignorance. Now I feel being rooted in confidence, being open to what others have to say. But I know what my truth is, and I don't need to tell that to people. I live my truth on a daily basis.
Wow. I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Please tell my guests, please tell my audience where they can reach you. And of course, I'm going to link it, everyone, in the show notes, but please tell them.
Firstly, thank you so much, Samantha. This conversation was so lovely. And gray skies outside, warm, sunny, daffodil, sunflower kind of conversation inside. Just lights up my heart. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
My name is super simple, Sweta Vikram. You're seeing it. My website is swetavikram.com. My social media handles are Sweta Vikram, easy to find. I also have a freebie. Since we've been talking about wellness and well-being, I have a free guide, sleep guide, where, you know, there's a lot of chaos happening in the world, and a lot of my clients tell me that they're struggling with getting a good night's sleep, and sleep is integral to our well-being. So reach out to me and I'll send you a copy of a rejuvenating sleep guide filled with Ayurveda tips. But otherwise, you can just go to my website, connect with me. I love to hear from people. And be well, take care of yourselves, most important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sweta, thank you so much for your honesty, your clarity, and the way you showed up for us, honoring your well-being. It isn't weakness, it's wisdom. To those of you listening, you don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to break down to be taken seriously. You don't have to stay in survival mode to just prove you belong. Sweta links are in the show notes. Check her out. Grab her free sleep guide and take one step towards choosing yourself again. And the beautiful conversation that we had, you spoke with spirit. I just love it so much. Thank you so much. If this resonated with anyone, please hit subscribe. Forward it to someone, a woman that you feel that could use this today. And I will see you next time. Thank you. Sis, you don't have to twist, shrink, or hide. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued for exactly who you are. If this episode spoke to you, make sure you follow, subscribe, so you never miss the conversation. And if you're ready to take this work deeper, take my confidence quiz. The link is in the show notes. Or book a session with me to start showing up in your career and life with the confidence you deserve. Until next time, walk through the door differently, show up, show out, be you, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Strong and fierce, taking over. No one can deny we're queens in our own right. Swagger on fleek, we're ruling the game, turning heads, yeah, we're making our own name. Living free, we're breaking the mold, unapologetic, we're standing bold. Every picture we post, it's a story untold. We're inspiring souls, watch us unfold, watch us unfold. Capture the moment, hold it tight. Every click, every flash, we're shining so bright. Through the lens, we're showing who we truly